Hello and welcome back to another episode with Lowell's Doo inside LEGO Mindstorms. And in this episode, I'm going to be teaching you how to use the switch block. If I can find, yeah, here we are. Just wait a little bit. Loading. Isn't this thing moving? Oh, good, moving. Okay, so I believe in the last episode, I brought out the switch block just to show you what it looks like. And yeah, that's basically it. I'm going to be showing you how to use the switch block. How to use the switch block. But in my episodes, what I want to do is just run through the previous thing in every single episode, just in case you get confused. Or if you forget, or if you just didn't watch that. Because if you're a fast learner, this should be pretty simple to understand. I'm not a fast learner, so don't feel bad if you don't get it. Just go to my previous episode. So, here. It's in the playlist. Sorry about that. Okay. So, how to use the weight block. Really fast tutorial. First, you set the motor to on. Make sure your ports are correct. Choose the speed, direction. Next, you would bring out the weight block, which is the little hourglass thing. Weight block, use the sensors. I'm going to use the ultrasonic because I like the way it is. I want to compare a value, distance centimeters. Changes when the value changes by an amount. Compares when the value is that amount. Go to the previous video if you didn't understand it again. Distance centimeters. I want the value to be less than 50, and then I will tell the motors to stop. Yes, here we are. How to use the weight block. Fairly fast, not too much explanation required. The switch block, on the other hand, is a bit more complicated. It might take 2 episodes or just 2 Bandicam recordings. Interesting way of putting it. And I think I went through the loop last episode too, so we'll hang on for the switch. Loop is simple too. It basically just repeats everything. The default setting is for an unlimited amount of loops. You can change that for sensor values, true or false, counting, logic, time. Time might be useful just for a certain amount of seconds. Again, I'm using the ultrasonic sensor, distance centimeters, and here. So I'm going to make the robot do this particular action over and over and over again. I don't even know what that action makes the robot do. But all I do know is that this is going to keep on going until something gets in the ultrasonic sensor's way and is less than 50 centimeters. So if the ultrasonic sensor sees something that is less than 50 centimeters, it'll stop this and move on to the next one. And I'm realizing that it didn't talk about something that is important. You see this part over here? This is a name that you can give the loop. For example, I'm going to name this Lowell's the Web. You know what? Forget that. I'm just going to write Lowell's. Oh, my laptop's getting hot. Isn't good. Alright, so I'm going to write Lowell's here. And enter. That'll basically make it the way it is. So now this loop is named. So you're probably wondering why I want to do that, because it doesn't seem very useful. But in programs, you have this block. It's called a loop interrupt. So if this wasn't like that, and if this was unlimited, there's actually no way to stop it. But then, LEGO Mindstorms came up with the loop interrupt. And what the loop interrupt does is, you probably guessed it, it interrupts the loop. So it just won't pause it, it completely stops the loop. And the drop down, I don't know why they put it there. There's only one option. It's kind of pointless if you ask me. But right now this is stopping a loop that doesn't exist. Wait, never mind, the loop does exist. 01. So, if I grab the play block and played it, if this was running, this would stop. But the thing is, 2 play blocks don't work, so this would have to be in the actual program itself. So let's say somewhere along the line, let's say something to do with the sensor, and the robot sees something, or the robot gets touched with the touch sensor, you could make it so that it stopped, using the weight block and some other stuff. like this switch. But then again, you need to understand the wait block and all that. So, if I want to stop low wells, if you click this button over here, it doesn't necessarily give you, well, it gives you a place to type, but that's a really stupid idea. Because you can just click it, and it'll stop. So, that's the way this is. So now let's get onto the switch, which is what this episode is about. If I can move. Yep, I can move. Okay, so what this episode is about. So if I grab the switch, it's really big and confusing and kind of funny looking. So first I'll get into how to use it. What the switch does is it compares the value, and if the value is true, also known as checkmarked, then it'll do what's in this box. If the value is false, it'll do what's in this box. The way you know that is by the check mark and the X, as I briefly said, but didn't very clearly say it like 5 seconds ago. So I'm going to start off with something rather simple. Grab 2 large motors, make this -1, and yeah, that's pretty much it for the motor part. So let's just run through what the switch block does right now. Basically, it has the touch sensor, which is over here, and the state in which it will measure. So you have the different states here, and you have basically the full drop down, like this. Not like the weight, because weight is a bit different from switch and loop. But forget about that. So what this switch block will do is, if this value is true, it'll play what's in the true box. If the value is false, it'll do what's in the false box. And the thing with this is really, 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 really useful when it comes to sensor-based applications. Programs. Yeah. So, let's just explain this a bit more further. So, the robot, okay, I'll just run through it. When I push the play button, nothing will happen. If the sensor port is plugged in, then you can make something happen. Sorry, I just screwed up. Hardcore. Forget about the huge play button, I didn't look at my program properly. And that just goes to say that people make mistakes. People that think that they can't make mistakes, like me, make mistakes. Yeah. So, when you start the robot on, the robot will go back. Because this value is false, making the X play. So, to put that in kid-friendly language if you're a kid, and adult-friendly language if you're an adult. By the way, I completely forgot to say this. I'll just say it right now. Basically, the reason why I'm making these tutorials is because in my school we do FLL, like First Lego League, and that's probably why you want the programming too. So these are just some of the strategies that we use for FLL. Well, we didn't really use it because we did quite bad in FLL. Yeah. But that's just why I'm making these videos. I plan to make Blender tutorials if you know what that is. I'll get to that later. But forget that. Okay, so what this would do is it takes the value at this current point. So if I'm pushing the touch sensor, let's see what 1 is. Yes. If I am literally pushing the touch sensor at the time that this takes the result, well, the data, basically, it will output true and make the robot go forward 1 rotation. But if, however, I'm not pushing it, which is most likely the case, the robot will go backwards, -1 rotation. But another main thing that you have to do with these switch blocks is you need to put them in a loop. For most purposes, you need to put these switch blocks in a loop. And by the way, if you don't like how it's so fat and annoying and big and fat and stuff, just click this switch to table view, and it will conserve a lot of space. And it didn't delete a box, it's just a tab on the top. So, if you can see the negative switching, because they're 2 different things here. I'll just go into table, no. I'll go into this view, because this view seems to be much more simpler to understand. Nah. That's my duck impression. Okay, so here we are again. So, I realized that the touch wasn't such a good thing to use, But now that we have the loop block, it'll be much more simpler to understand, basically. Because this will just keep on going over and over and over again, because it's unlimitedly looped. So, you have the switch and the loop. Two of probably the most useful blocks. The wait probably goes in between switch and loop. Actually, none of those blocks are useful compared to the start block, because without it, I mean, like, yeah, you wouldn't be able to make the robot do anything. Same with those. Okay, sorry about that. But the main thing here is that it keeps on doing it. So for example, if I'm not pressing it the first time, the robot will back up one rotation. But then it does it again. And this time if I'm pressing it, the robot will move forward one rotation because of this value. So if I didn't explain it clear enough, if this value is true, in this case, being pressed, the checkmark thingy-majiggy will be... And notice how I'm making a checkmark with my cursor? Funny. The thing that is in the checkmark will be played. If it is true, the thing in the X will be played. And that's the way that the switch block works. So, if you aren't watching this video... That sounds so funny. If you aren't watching this... Of course you're watching this video. Okay, whatever. If you aren't watching this video, in my next video there'll be a tutorial. And I just realized that I didn't have to say that. Wow, lol. So... Oh, and by the way, if you enjoyed my videos, leave a sub. If you don't want to leave a sub, then don't leave a sub. I'm just trying to get a proper YouTube account, kind of, if you know what I mean. Yeah. Lol. Okay, but... That was random. Okay. Sorry, my words are a complete mumbly jumble today. I don't know why. So, this is the way to use the switch block. You put the value... I'm just going to run over it again with another value. You notice that there won't be a change in this. There isn't... I mean, like, not look up... There isn't a change in the drop bar. Dropbox. Where'd you go, Dropbox? Yeah, there won't be a change in Dropbox. Yeah, you guys are looking at all my French work. Interesting. Now, okay, good. Yeah, this has really been one random video. Okay, so the switch will just basically switch. That's where it gets its name from. And I forgot to mention that if you are good at computer programming, if you know any computer programming language, forget that this is called a switch block. Completely ignore that. Just look at this as an if. Because it makes much more sense as an if. In fact, that's where I actually learned how to use this block. I didn't go from a tutorial. One day I was just thinking, and then I'm like, I wonder how to use the switch block. And then I thought about it, I looked at it again, and then I realized, like, it's like an if statement, true and false. If you don't know any computer programming language, don't worry about it. Don't go to learn it. It takes a long time. I'm trying to learn Java, and I'm not good at it whatsoever. So don't hold me accountable for that. So this is how to use the switch block. And there isn't a switch interrupt, because they just don't want to interrupt switches. There isn't a wait interrupt. In other words, the only thing that has an interrupt is a loop. And one... Sorry, I read Joel in there. I wonder if you can, like... Well, what do you know? There is something called a switch interrupt, and I just learned that. Apparently that the loop interrupt is also a switch interrupt. You might want to do some experimenting with that and see if it actually works out. Wow. Wow. This is amazing. So... much better. Okay, so that's how to use the switch block. And by the way, my video is much longer this time because I realized how to put two videos together. Yeah. I should be embarrassed for that. Bye! See you next video. And if you want some Blender videos, just leave it in the comments because I plan to make Blender videos sometime soon.